be ready to kick it off. So I'm super excited for today's masterclass. We've got a really great guest here today as well, so you don't just have to listen to me. And we're going to make this interactive. So for those of you watching at home, be ready. We've got some polls. We want to hear kind of from you as well. So be on the lookout for those. If you have any questions as we're going through, we've got a team here on my side that are helping answer some of those and also helping surface them as well. So you'll see that Q&A button there, and you can go ahead and pop your questions in as they come up. So thank you all for being here, and let's kick it off. So today we're talking from reactive to reliable, reducing unplanned downtime at scale. This is a problem that I've heard from more than a few folks, and let's figure, you know what, let's put some content together, talk about it, and share some best practices from some good resources here. So a little bit of housekeeping here. The webinar is being recorded, so if you don't want to take rigorous notes the whole time, don't worry. We'll send you a copy right afterwards. It should be in your inbox by end of the day. And if you've got questions, like I said, go ahead and hit that Q&A feature, and we will either address them on over text, over message on the system here, or we'll talk about them live. A little bit about me, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Nick Haas. I'm one of the co-founders here at MaintainX. I work closely with a lot of our strategic enterprise customers and lead our community. If you haven't had a chance to check out the MaintainX community, definitely do that. You can find it in your app on mobile or web under hit that support, and you'll see a link to go to the community. A great resource for folks. And then I spend a lot of time at our events and helping folks with digital transformation strategies as well. So I'm most excited here to introduce Chris Hudson. Chris, I'll let you go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate everybody taking time with us today. Chris Hudson. I cut my teeth in manufacturing with a lot of years experience in different roles, both in terms of fabricating equipment and servicing that equipment in high-speed packaging, both primary and secondary packaging industry. I guess what's unique is I was a customer deploying MaintainX and global manufacturing facilities, and then also to our field service teams in that particular use case. So really looking forward to talking with you all today as we roll our sleeves up and talk about that term downtime and trying to move to reliable.
Well, without further ado, we'll kick it off, I think, with a poll. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing here, but we want to sort of set the stage on why unplanned downtime hurts and how much it hurts. So you should see a poll here in a second here. Like, how often does unplanned downtime disrupt your production schedule today? So go ahead and fill that out, and then we'll kind of kick into the first question here. No right or wrong answers. We're not I don't even think we can see who's voting what. So vote your heart, vote your truth. Let's get some real insights out there. All right, it looks like we're getting a good critical mass here, and it's predominantly daily, multiple times per shift. Some folks I don't even know how you have time to get on the webinar. Thank you for staving fires off for just a minute. And for those who are rarely, you've got to share your secrets. We're going to have you come on next time and hear a little bit about what you're doing. But this is super helpful. And so let's kick this off, Chris. Like, in simple terms, what do we mean by unplanned downtime? Why does it disrupt schedules and increase costs, frustrate both maintenance and operations teams?
That's a really good question, and I think we can all probably agree that that term reliability or reliable is somewhat ambiguous, right? It has a lot of inferences and connotations and engineering terminology, but when we distill unplanned downtime to the simplest terms, we hopefully can all relate that this is really any equipment failure or stoppage that wasn't planned, scheduled or expected. And Nick, as you sort of mentioned, these can be disruptive, and these disruptions often negatively impact production plans. They can generate emergency labor and parts cost, and ultimately propel maintenance and operations into constant firefighting or reactive mode. And yeah, I go back to my time in maintenance, and you all may be able to reflect on a culture. Some of this is learned, as the poll responded with daily, weekly, sometimes multi-shift downtime events. There sort of is this adrenaline factor that I found in the maintenance world, managing 3 shifts of maintenance across multiple facilities. And yet, I don't know, maybe you could give a thumbs up if you all have somebody on your team that kind of goes into that Superman mode when things go down, and there's almost sort of an adrenaline anticipation with the ability to problem solve. Whether that's on the radio con or notifications, some thumbs ups. So some people are sort of wired to respond to this, and I think hopefully today what we're gonna all talk about and demonstrate is you can get some of that same type of morale boost and adrenaline just by being in like your daily stand up or your weekly tiered meeting where you're constantly performing above the line around reliability and availability, or OEE. So let's talk more about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's see, like, how do we even identify? Let's talk about like identifying it, like the root causes, the early warning signs. We got another poll here for you folks. Like when, and the question for everyone here is like when unplanned downtime happens at your site, what's the most common trigger that you see? Go ahead and fill that out. We'll give us a sort of a good talking point to launch into the next conversation on. There we go. Told you it's going to be a little interactive today.
There will be a quiz. No right answers either.
Oh, do we have a quiz feature? Probably. So we're seeing a lot of varies a lot, no single pattern so far. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Awesome. So, and then aging equipment. Yeah. Operator error. I've never seen operator error. That doesn't happen, right? That's a myth. Depending on who you're asking. No, this is great. So I guess Chris, we've sort of seen what they shared. Like what have you seen across facilities? What would you have selected? What are some of the most common causes of unexpected equipment failure from your background?
Yeah, and again, being on the manufacturing side, both designing equipment, maintaining equipment, and then on the service side, I think the most common causes often start with fundamental maintenance methods that are just completed poorly or are too late, right? And this can manifest by lack of preventive maintenance, attainment, or discipline, maybe missed inspections, chronic lubrication issues, that run to fail culture we talked about. And yeah, Nick, operators that either intentionally or arbitrarily maybe push equipment and assets beyond their limits. But I want to also peel back a little bit on the more complex causes, which can sometimes be out of our control when it comes to poor machine design, machines that are just inherently not designed for maintainability or have root defects. There's also mechanical and controls failure modes that certainly cause a significant amount of downtime. There's calibration requirements, and sometimes it's just a lack of a continuous improvement program to really identify those.
Yeah, that makes sense. And like sometimes there's early warning signs too that you kind of maybe see, and they're not necessarily something that makes when it happens once or twice, it's not a big deal. But I want to ask you all here if you have any observations as you think through some of those issues we were talking about. What are some of the early warning signs that often get overlooked in your sites that maybe if it happens once, not a big deal, or it's not widely reported. People don't think about it. But if it's a pattern, it starts popping up over and over again, you'd realize there's an issue there. And a few folks coming in with some responses, and sound and vibration changes are definitely, they say a good technician can walk a plant with his eyes closed and decide, figure out exactly how well things are running, right?
And the old screwdriver to the gearbox listen test.
Yeah.
When
All
they
right, we're
start
going to get
when they
go
start
ahead.
tasting when you start tasting certain fluids, that's when I'm wondering if we're just overlapping into some OSHA categories.
Yeah, that's usually a leading indicator into operator error, though. They a little too high on the supply there. And, all right, well, this is a good kind of overview. Like, what are some of the warning signs that you've seen teams are often missing or maybe under accounting for in your experience, Chris?
Yeah, some of these were definitely cited in the poll. I
Yeah,
think early warning signs that get missed are usually because they're very subtle, right? There are the abnormal noises, maybe some graduating rising temperatures, a small leak, vibration change, nuisance alarms. And I say nuisance alarm, those can be major faults. It's not unusual to see operators. I used to come in, we put in this really nice, expensive, multi-million dollar robotic system, and I'd come in at the start of shift, and I'd notice the operator would keep clearing out a major fault every day. And after about a week, I went up and kind of asked him, and he was just resetting and basically making a small equipment adjustment that allowed him to reset. But those nuisance alarms and repeat minor work orders that aren't investigated, can be some subtle problems. But systematically, I think considering every way a product or a process can fail helps facilitate an effective reliability program. And I know we're going to talk a little more later on about reliability centered maintenance and even some FMEA kind of build out that can be more quantitative in this regard.
yeah, 100%. I hope folks can appreciate sort of this journey we're taking on, because we're talking about reducing unplanned downtime at scale, and we're asking folks, are you hearing vibration issues at your plant or small thing? But all of these, when you get into this pattern day to day, and you sort of start to let some complacency slide, or you don't build those habits to start measuring and monitoring those small issues, that's when you start to get these unplanned downtime issues at scale, right? And so when we talk about wanting to reduce them, it's about sort of bringing back that mindset of, hey, root cause is really important to think about, and that might not be the same for every incident, and that might not be the same for every plant, but kind of helping make sure you've got that mindset of thinking through what are those failure points. And so, let's talk a little bit about, like, now that we sort of identified some of these points, let's ask folks here. I got another poll for you. How we're moving from reactive to proactive. So if you had to pick one first move to reduce downtime without any new capex, what would you prioritize? So go ahead and pop this in here. See if any of these make sense or resonate with you. Just improving PM completion, improving operator basic care. Go after those top recurring failures. Maybe that target those critical assets. Maybe your planning and scheduling discipline's lacking. Standardizing job plans and best practice repairs. Curious to see how folks reply here. All right, I like people are getting into the flow of this polling. There's just a little something new we're trying out. So we'll ask you how you like it at the end, but I think it's going to be make this a little bit more interesting too. I just wanted to watch and learn. I didn't want to work. This is operator level work. You're just pushing a button, right? Awesome. Well, this is pretty split. Interesting. So, Chris, if a team wants to reduce their unplanned downtime without buying new equipment, where do you think they should focus, and how do those results strike you?
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm sure a lot of people on this today can relate to their annual process for CapEx justifications and approvals, right? So one of the critical data points there is maybe trying to define those assets that are, repair versus replacement analysis. And so it's always unique, I think, that in some cases it's great to have an effective CMMS that can help you really capture and quantify the cost to repair versus replace. But I think, for me, there's three steps that I think can reduce unplanned downtime without that CapEx expenditure, and that is two that are definitely identified here with the group, and that is, I think, really look at what you can do to improve your preventive maintenance methods. And that can get, simple from just attainment through using like lean tools like a domain model to define, measure, analyze, prove, control
Yep.
those kinds of downtimes. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about, again, things that you can do through sensors and PLC and OT data. But for me, the second thing is also identified here as a high score is to improve autonomous operator care. So whether that's through a formal TPM program or just ensuring that the experts on the equipment, which are many times your operators, that you're empowering them to complete red tags, to do basic CIL inspections, and that they're involved in the autonomous process. The third thing for me is um, and for a lot of folks, it starts with identifying what are the critical assets. If you're in a facility with 500 to 1,000 assets, and even if you're capturing, OT data, whether that's through a SCADA system or MaintainX parameters, still there's a lot of noise. There could be 50,000 PLC tags in a facility with those many assets. So it's identify kind of the Pareto analysis, just like you would your parts. What are your A assets, and what are those, and visualize and address chronic issues with those in terms of countermeasures. So I think we're going to talk a little bit later about once you've identified those critical assets, using reliability centered maintenance and FMEA processes to prioritize instead of just reacting to the loudest breakdown.
Yeah. And so we'll talk about the shift, but I want to first, before we get into the shift, I want to hear from the audience again, like how they would best describe their current maintenance mix. So again, best judgment here, best guess. This isn't a scientific poll but I want to kind of get a sense of where people are that are watching today. Some folks who are quick to the trigger, they're like, it's mostly reactive. You can tell they're fast. They can react quickly because they're used to it. We got a good split here. All right. Talked to a plant manager last week who thought he hadn't looked at the data. He was pretty sure they were doing 70% planned work, 30% reactive. They were doing a decent job of tracking it. Not great. It was actually the opposite. It's 30% planned, 70% reactive, and it started a good conversation into where their MRO budget was going. But here people are pretty, this is a good split. Got some folks who are a little bit more on the planned side, but for the most part, it's still folks trying to make that transition. So, Chris, what does the shift from reactive to proactive prevention really look like in a day-to-day operation? You don't get to call timeout and reset everybody for a couple weeks. So what is that? How do you kind of take that shift in flight?
Yeah, I think to the point here, it's track it, right? Do you really know what your plan versus reactive workload is? And are you tracking that on critical assets like we talked? But I think ultimately in the course of a day or a week, how this shows up is just fewer emergency calls. I
Yeah.
always say, do you have a tick list that just says when you come in today and you had a plan of what you had to work on, what PMs were complete, what projects you're involved in, how many times during the course of the day and for how long was your team or yourself interrupted for emergency calls? So I think it looks like more planned work, improved scheduling tools, and certainly the ability to do root cause corrective actions to again further refine and reduce those type of reactive requirements. And here's how it looks in the real world. It's the ability for maintenance to fix problems before production feels them. And so those measurable benefits can include reduced downtime, extended equipment life, dealing with a customer that budget is $20 million a year for CapEx. And actually 60% of that is replacement of existing assets. So for them to be able to extend equipment life by even a few years is a multi-million dollar cost avoidance.
Right.
And the other thing it looks like in the real world are two other things: lower cost. And then for me, it's the morale of your team. For people that are constantly interrupted versus those teams that feel like they can plan, they have the right tools, software parts available to do their job, just translates into a higher performing team.
I get it. And you're talking a little bit about, knowing kind of what data to where how to measure this and how to spot it. So I want to ask the audience here, like how many, what data sources are you all relying on today to spot risk early? And are you looking at just technician notes and tribal knowledge, or you just look at sort of basic PM completion inspection findings, looking through that? Are you monitoring your downtime history and failure codes? Do you have condition data? Are you looking at vibration, what ultrasound, temperature, production signals? See what we got coming in here. Some who are like, I don't think we have data. Then the first one's for you. The technician notes and tribal knowledge. That's where everybody starts. And it's still a great source, actually. We'll talk a little bit about that later, but it's not nothing. It's about figuring out how to leverage that into action is sort of the trick. Get a few looking at condition data, a few in production signals. Nice. All right. So we got a good kind of nice chart here that mapped out kind of how I thought it might. Majority
Oh,
still towards the top. What about, is that what
yeah.
you're sort of expect, Chris?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It's a pretty good spread. I think the one that didn't score high here, which is a little surprising, are just production signals, right? It's the Gimba.
Yeah.
What kind of scrap, cycle time, whip, quality, as you do the gimbal walk. Those things usually you can spot them pretty easily if you know what you're looking for. But I don't know, Nick, I want to flip the script on this for you. I know you
Yeah.
spend a lot of time with our industry partners and customers around OT and sensor data. So, what types of maintenance data do you feel are most valuable for preventing and eliminating failures?
Could feel like a cop out, but it's all of it, really. I mean, it's if you want to get a holistic picture of the health of your organization and your operation, you want to work towards a maturity model that has leadership support and buy-in, because some of this is going to require capex investments and resources. But you want to have all of that information to really get to that nirvana, that ultimate space where you can start to have a clear understanding of what's going on and when things are going to happen. Now, that said, is a realist and understanding that I've yet to meet anyone with unlimited resources, um, and folks that have all sorts of different constraints. But I think there's a lot of opportunity with the decreasing costs and accessibility of a lot of the OT technologies that previously were just for the big dogs with big budgets or big teams that could analyze it. The cost of incorporating vibration technology into your production lines and your motors and things like that has gotten a lot more, a lot cheaper than it was 10 years ago. It's a lot more accessible. There's a lot happening there. So, if you're part of a team that maybe hasn't evaluated those things in a few years because last time you did, it was like, oh, that's way out of the budget. They're kind of like flat screen TVs. It's getting a lot cheaper. I think you're going to see everybody has that at some point, and it's not going to be quite as outrageous. So that'd be maybe my call out there. And then I think we've got some interesting sort of direction with the way that technology is heading. That a lot of these are going to be able to talk and work better together, and help maybe bridge some of the silos. But what data, you talked a little bit about, I think might be interesting for folks to hear who just voted on this poll and not bringing in production data. I know you were a big proponent of leveraging that information because it was a good resource for you. I saw a comment here like, what is vibration equipment? I'm talking about like sensors that you can slap onto your magnet or screw them in into sit on top of a motor, and it can basically read the heartbeat of the motor and understand, is it healthy? Is it draining a lot of extra energy or power? Is it rattling around more than it's supposed to? And that's usually a pretty good indication of failure.
And when we talk about rotating equipment in terms of vibration analysis, it doesn't necessarily have to be continuous monitoring, right? Some of that's built in, out of the box, and we have partners also that we work with to build that out for continuous, but it could be route based, right? Where you have a kit. It's not unusual that teams will say maybe monthly have a work order for vibration assessment, really trying to capture the frequency signals of some of those large power transmissions. I recall we had a few 50 to 100 horsepower drivetrains that we were always monitoring for vibration, because not only the cost to replace, but the downtime event itself can be pretty catastrophic. So
are you seeing folks put those on HVAC refrigeration units? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And
James
put another comment there. They're looking at it, and the cost for the project is a quarter of the cost of the last run to fail event. And that's the reality, is that, again, it seems like some of those technologies are, depending on when you last looked into it, maybe out of reach, but surprisingly accessible today, and they play really well with tools like ours. So, but yeah, talk a little bit about the production technology, data points that you're referencing there, and just general overall, like what some of the most valuable maintenance data is.
Yeah, I think it's again assessing that the critical production equipment, but then also you were describing even some of the support equipment. I recall, in my maintenance manager's life, getting calls in the middle of the night or on second shift because the boardroom HVAC system was down, and initially that wasn't in my top production equipment to support. But believe me, when we have customers or key board meetings going on, it's important that one just goes away. It doesn't become a downtime event. So yeah, whether you're monitoring vibration, temperature, lots of key instrumentation data out there. And the one thing I saw in the poll, which is also very interesting, is the types of feedback that you get on work orders. MaintainX has the ability to even prompt the subject matter experts, your top technicians, to include their observations on a work order. And so by capturing those comments and feedback and actual events that happen within a work order, that becomes part of your knowledge base. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about AI later on, but those are key indicators too that are fed by your subject matter experts as part of your overall knowledge base into your AI data set.
Yeah, oh, completely agree. So let's I want to ask the audience another quick question as we move on. Like, how does work typically rise to the top of the list at your site today? Is that a production driven escalation? Is it, first in, first out on the CMMS? planner, supervisor triaging, weekly scheduling, frozen plan, or risk-based sort of scoring approach. And we'll talk a little bit about what in Chris's experience, what he's seen top teams do. Production usually holds a pretty big hammer. Get this online. Don't care what your guys are doing. Sometimes it's the right call. Like
the FIFO system isn't getting a whole lot of love.
No, it's just sort of in the background. All right, so we've got a good mix here between the top three, or the only three really. So Chris, what are most teams have resource constraints, but how are the top teams using the data they already have to prioritize what gets worked on, what can wait, what truly needs attention now? What is your best practice here, guys?
I think what you'll see commonly is, a planning process, and that can be, again, by just tier meetings, going over data from yesterday and this morning as we, kick off a toolbox meeting. And so usually the stakeholders are collectively ranking those tasks by risk and impact, right? And so that can be those that the team, with data bring priority based on a certain production schedule for that day. So that can be variable. I think one thing that helps us define risk is those teams that are using more failure mode analysis and developing risk scorecards based on like RPNs, the risk priority numbers, which is based on severity, occurrence, and detection. And so they've built models, and they collect that data based on defined failure modes. And so that points more towards quantitative versus a qualitative response. But there's a couple things also that certainly rise in the prioritization, and that should be safety, right, for everyone. So whether that's data that's collected via integration or automated tools, but anytime there's an inspection with a safety finding, hopefully you should strive to have auto notifications within say your CMMS software like MaintainX does, to ensure that immediately those kinds of safety issues are escalated. And then what you see here is the production bottlenecks. Those are always going to try to rise to a priority, but there should be a clear early warning signal. And again, I'd like to talk a little bit more later about how AI-enabled tools can help easily digestible by frontline teams to help make some of those decisions at the point of work.
Right. Yeah. Agreed. Because that risk-based approach doesn't ignore the production needs. That's to be clear. That's very much a factor in that equation. So for those who are still very much production driven, you're not. It's a shift, but it's not a dramatic pull away from what you've been doing to start to figure out how to move that model a little bit further. But you talk about AI. I want to quickly see where folks here in the room are on reliability or on AI, excuse me, and how they're using it to support maintenance and reliability. And no right or wrong answers here again. Just want to get a sense of where folks are at. Not using it yet. Got some individual experimentation, teams trying it out, piloting it in workflows, standardized and governed use across sites or departments. Seeing some folks here in the chat talking about how they've got a lot of assets, a lot of things to look over, and only a few techs. The AI piece here is, it feels like a buzzword. People are talking about it a lot. This is the part that I promise is going to be a very big part of the answer to how you make that pivot to handle and tackle a lot of these 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 asset intense environments with and help you do more with less, right? Um, and so for teams that are early in reliability maturity with limited data, what have you seen simple Gen AI tools do to create real value for folks in the first 60, 90 days, and what guardrails make it safe and repeatable? What do you think, Chris? Or do you want me to take a first stab at it?
Yeah, I think you know, is a proponent of standard work, right? When it comes to lean and AI. So by being able to define procedures, we have some great AI tools that can read documentation, a 500-page manual, and
Yeah.
basically develop a best-in-class procedure for maintenance and include all the spare parts and tools required. So I think it's some of those initial steps on leveraging AI before moving necessarily all the way through to prescriptive or predictive failures. What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can be a little intimidating because it's, one of the things that's really unique about the advancement of AI, and I know it's hard to have a webinar or talk, about this without bringing AI into it. It feels like, but the rate of change is so profound with Gen AI today that it's hard to overstate how fast it's developing. If you last took a serious run at it 6 months ago, a year ago, even a couple months ago, um, the the quality of the outputs have improved substantially, and so it's really incumbent. I think important. More than 50% of folks said they're not using it yet at all, just exploring, maybe want to learn a little bit more. There's a lot of tools out there that are free that you can use, from Google's Gemini to, um, OpenAI has a, ChatGPT. It's free versions, and even the paid versions are relatively inexpensive to just kind of kick the tires. I wouldn't put sensitive company data in there, but what you can do, especially not the free versions, but you can start to get a sense of, like, before you have perfect data, you start to describe some of the challenges you're facing and start to describe some of the constraints, whether those are resource constraints from lack of headcount, lack of capex dollars that you can use to replace some of these things. Um, you can get really personalized, custom tailored, you know, outputs that can give you a really impressively strong foundation to help not only put some structure and guidance around your go forward strategy with your team, but it can also give you you can help use that to give you the language that you need to communicate with your leadership team to maybe fight for some of those resources more effectively. And what we're doing with, and that's from a high level of how you can use some of the out of the box Gen AI tools that are available to everybody to start to build some comfort level and foundational, do some foundation exercises to help wrap your head around the scope and scale of some of your organization specific problems, or challenges. And then as you get into the application of how it's helping folks today with, very limited clean data early on, is you hinted at it earlier, Chris, with the things we have with Copilot in MaintainX today. Just having technicians use voice recorder to share what they just performed on a on a work order, and help them document that a lot more cleanly. It helps build a library of knowledge that you'll be able to go back and reference and understand how did we address this previously. And what we're doing today with some of our organizations is helping scale that knowledge out so that you're not dependent on that individual being on the clock, available near wherever that incident's happening, to be able to easily pull that out. And that's something that AI does a lot better than any other previous system. Even if you knew how to navigate your CMMS or your work system. You still had to go back and find it, sort it, look through, and then review it, see what they wrote down. Being able to pull out the information that you need right at that point of work is really transforming the meantime, the meantime to repair for a lot of these breakdowns, and also helping sort of surface pattern recognition for some of those small things that you may not have noticed that help you sort of say, hey, because these leading indicators are happening again, we're going to be able to start to recognize there's an opportunity to get ahead of these breakdowns going forward. So I think it's a really incredible bridge to maturity for organizations to sort of, this will be a great way to shortcut what previously would have been an exercise that would have taken a lot of time and effort and organizational change to get half the quality of the output you're going to be getting from these tools. So I don't know if you have anything that you want to chime or add on that, Chris, but
No, I think it's all up to the individual use case, right? And it doesn't have to be overwhelmingly complex. You can start with, like I said, I always like starting with maybe key equipment, but it's building that data structure that's going to allow you to leverage that and make it scalable.
we look back at like the poll earlier, most folks are relying on technician notes and tribal knowledge today. Well, we want to make AI can make that actionable. So it's more important than ever to start to capture those, make sure we're capturing those notes and that knowledge in a format that AI is going to be able to receive and do something smart with. So, anyways, that's our fun little piece here on focused on AI. I want to move things back to kind of where folks are on preventive versus like a predictive maintenance, and we'll kind of talk a little bit about that as well. So, um, you know, how are folks managing their PMs today? Is it mostly time based with some operator checks, condition based on critical assets, get some predictive pilots or predictive at scale? At the reactive guy, slower this time because we have condition based inspections coming in hot. Mostly time based PMs, great. An early lead here. Operator checks is coming in, good. Chris, how should teams think about this preventive versus predictive maintenance in practical real world terms? Because
Yeah.
we don't live in a classroom. We live in the reality of the plants in their current state.
Yeah, I mean, I think, when you compare preventive versus predictive, it's really about timing and strategic advantage. I see a lot of 48% saying time based plus operator checks, and then there's also this a larger percentage of growing people that are doing here on the poll condition based inspections on critical assets. So, where traditional preventive maintenance is based on time or usage, right? It could be cycles, it could, be hours. Um, it could even be condition based, while predictive's using analytical data to act on failure indicators, as well as kind of Nick described, prioritizing it based on AI algorithms, based on reading actual system or equipment behavior. But one way to start small is take one of the critical equipment asset and understand. I always say the production unit of measure. What is that machine producing? Is it pounds of steel? Is it a robotic weld cell and pipe diameter inches? One of the things that I did when you look at critical equipment bottlenecks, we had a powder paint line. And paint is always interesting because it's both part of a production bottleneck, but it can also be on prep to ship. When you're going to ship equipment, there's inevitably paint touch up. And so you're bringing, completed equipment back in through a production cell for touch up purposes. But downtime and say a bottleneck like that can be really expensive. And so there used to be a time-based maintenance program that our team had, which was about a 3-hour downtime to change out all the filter media on this high-speed automated powder line. And so when we started looking at planned downtime as well as unplanned, we started realizing that that doesn't have to be time-based. So, with a simple manometer that's measuring resistance in inches of water column on that filter media, you can prescribe, almost like when your car says you're 80% of oil life, right? Without having to do an oil uh, analysis on, particulate. So we basically started shifting to more condition-based maintenance like that had huge savings. We were very precise when we took that equipment down for a maintenance interval, and we knew in advance, and it was more surgical, right? So that's some of that strategic advantage, and I see some people here on the poll that are alluding to that.
And sometimes time-based PMs are good, and you bring up surgical. So, if you're over 45, you got to get a colonoscopy, get it booked. It's a good time-based PM. But with your car, go by the mileage, go by the runtime, right? Love it. Let's talk a little bit about like extending your asset life and improving value. I want to ask the audience here, like, what practice has been the biggest lever for helping extend asset life in your experience? Is it that strong clean, inspect, lube program? Is it better standard work and job plans? Where are you seeing the most benefit to keeping your assets up and running longer? Plan rebuilds, overhauls. Sometimes you just got to get it going faster, more root cause analysis. Improving your installation processes is a good. See some folks jumping in there. Better work and job plans is taking the early lead here. What habits and processes have you seen consistently help in your experience, Chris? Obviously, I think this is one of those where you want to do all of the above if you can, right?
Yeah, I was going to say there's a great blend on response here because they're all important, and I think it
Yeah.
depends on the on any particular. Is it peak period, or is it what are the variables? Are you hitting goals in terms of production output? Are you falling short? So, but the biggest leading answer here, I think we can all rally around, which is better standard work and job plans. And that's one thing that attracted me to MaintainX as a customer was the user interface for what I considered to be world-class one-point lessons. In a mobile device, a tablet or a phone, to be able to look at a 10-step process with pictures and exploded views, and ensuring that work that you're doing when it comes to a task is performed repeatedly and at high quality. So I think the other thing is an effective CIL program, and that goes back to autonomous maintenance. But I always just go back to the 4-step method of cleaning is inspection, inspection is detection, and a lot of times detection leads to correction. And that all starts by having a strong CIL program. And you can see that when you go around a plant, you do like a 5S audit, and those people that are organized, that keep their tools clean, and are calibrated and very visual. That is a good process, and I think
You can do a
when it comes,
5S audit for free, right? I mean, you can download that checklist and go run that tomorrow, right?
yeah, we have a great 5S scorecard. I love it, and it's one of those things that again I use, and we see customers using. To gamify, when you post month over month or week over week 5S scorecards, and you compare those to the other process areas in your facility. The other thing is also on data-driven inspections. I call it checkitis. A lot of people just go through, check things off a list on an inspection, but make it more quantifiable. Require a recorded value, whether it's a micrometer value, or it could even be a picture when it in the lean mode, when it compares a good standard picture versus a bad standard. But those quantifiable data-driven inspection scorecards are also really key in extending equipment life. And then it's, getting into overhauls and root cause corrective action instead of just symptomatic, patching.
Well, as we think about extending life cycle, I know that's an important thing, that metric that leadership cares about, because that means they have to spend as much money buying new equipment. But I want to just quickly get one more poll here from the audience. When you talk to leadership, what are the metrics that y'all are using today that seems to land or show the most impact? Feel free to go ahead. And is it availability? Is it mean time between failure? Mean time to repair? Maintenance cost trend? On-time completion? If you've got something that we didn't list here, feel free to throw it in the chat as well. Because I want to, as we think about reducing unplanned downtime at scale, it's important to get buy-in from leadership. You need them to support this. If nothing else, so they back you up when you need to get your operator care programs going or whatever it is that you're doing, right? But in a better case, even better case scenario, maybe they help open up more resources because they understand that you know how to measure and be a good steward of that capital. So we're getting a good split here. Chris, what is your kind of experience, and where have you seen success when maintenance leaders, what metrics that are showing and helping reduce the unplanned downtime, prove that it's saving money and improving reliability overall?
Yeah, I see a large response here on OEE. So certainly availability times production schedule times quality outputs resonates with production leadership. But I think in general, it's really understanding what are the metrics, and then having a waterfall or an aligned KPI program where as an MRO team that you're exceeding those. And this can be driven by, improving OEE as well as reducing labor and MRO cost. I always feel like maintenance in many ways is considered sometimes by the leadership team as an indirect um, effort and not a true cost center. But I think what you can do is stay active in cross-functional teams across operations so that maintenance can be integrated into the ecosystem as a competitive advantage, and that you're constantly upskilling your teams, right? And that you're generating recognizable production outcomes.
Yeah, I like it. I think that's so important, and I would also suggest audit your way you're tracking a lot of those metrics as well. I've seen a lot of organizations that maybe they're tracked on OEE, but the way they're getting availability isn't accurately reflecting what's actually going on. And so when they do put better tooling and metrics or resources to try to track that, they see availability fall because it was maybe represented higher in the OEE metric than it actually was. And so they're like, we just gave you all these resources, and now you're telling me availability is going down. So it's second, I would definitely question the metrics that you are tracking and make sure you feel really good about the accuracy of them. And it's not an admission of failure or defeat. It's simply if you're starting at a false baseline, it's hard to prove that you're getting better if your initial metrics are showing poorly or poorer than your
Good point.
previous. Yeah.
Good point. Audit the results and really publish the gap assessment.
Yeah. This has been a lot of fun for me and for have Chris. We've got maybe time for one or two questions, but I've also got a poll here that I want to share with you all on what topic you want to go deeper on in a future masterclass. So if you got any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. And then we want to share this last question here. Feel free to let us know. What do you want to learn more about? Where can we be able to add more value to you all in the future? And if you don't see what you're looking for, again, feel free to go to the chat. Let us know what you think. Always looking, we're in the spirit of continuous improvement. We want to make sure we can keep getting better and help you all get better as well. Getting a good little mix here. If you don't have any further questions here, I want to let you all know we've got some great resources. If you haven't familiarized yourself with them yet, with our academy, get certifications, guides, courses. We've got our community, as I mentioned earlier. Definitely check that out if you haven't. All of these resources are free to join and participate in. And then if you want to stay up to date on what our next webinars are and sign up, feel free to check that link out as well. We keep that up to date to make sure you always know what's coming. So without further ado, thank you all so much. And we'll see you at the next masterclass. Thank you, Chris, for joining me today. Hope everyone had a good time.